Hello, this is Katherine. This is my first check-in after the call with Alexa.
Hello, I'm Alexa. Welcome back to my channel. I'm a San Francisco-based product designer, and today I'm doing a video with an aspiring UX designer who lives in Orange County, California, and her name is Katherine.
The call was great. It went through a lot of the things that I really wanted to address, which was the storytelling element of my portfolio and what I can do to make it much more interesting. Because right now it just goes through all the steps that I did, in chronological order. So after getting her feedback, I have a much better idea of what I can do to draw people's attentions in and most importantly address the so what of the project. So this was a really interesting phone call for me because it reminded me of a problem that I had when I was writing my senior essay back in my undergraduate days, and I have all the evidence for it with comparative research and user interviews and whatnot, but why should people care? So someone who's looking at it, they think it's great, but what am I saying exactly that we should draw them in and make them actually dive deeper into the portfolio and ideally, want to have me for a phone call or interview. Thanks so much for the feedback, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how I'm gonna push this further. Thanks.
All right, hey everyone. I'm about to call Katherine. We have been exchanging emails over the last week. Helping her sort of work through some of those things that we talked to on our first call. And now we're going to review her work. Pretty just general, want to see where she's at, what she's thinking. And we're going to review both her online portfolio changes for the project Rally, as well as review her offline portfolio, which is again, this PDF presentation that she's put together that she'll end up using when she wants to present her portfolio work at an actual interview. So I'm gonna call her. Let's see. Okay, now we wait. Hi.
Hi.
Hey, can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good.
I'm so excited to go through your stuff. Thanks for putting that all together. Maybe before we jump into it, just what do you think? Where are you at with all of this?
I thought it was super interesting for me because I never considered doing it this way because I didn't know, because I look on Hands and Dribble, of course, and things like that, but I don't know what people's processes are, or in that regard, it's okay, they're showing me this, but what are they not showing? And no one tells you that,
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting to hide and what to highlight.
How helpful it is reviewing other people's online portfolios if it really isn't always what they're going to be showing when they're going to present their work. Yeah. Okay, let's share my screen. Okay, cool. So let's go through the problem statement and the goal, because that was, I think, a lot of the focus of those emails back and forth. Yeah. And I'm super excited where you've brought this. What do you think about these two statements now?
I think it's a lot more clear and I like where it's at. In the beginning, I know what I'm doing, but then as you're trying to explain it and put it together in a portfolio, it's I have to make it complicated because then that makes it sound more interesting and important.
The more, I guess, specific you can make the problem statement, the more constraints you're really adding into your design. And that's often really helpful in how we can really understand who you're targeting, what really is the problem. When you write the problem statement in a specific way like that too, it's going to be a lot clearer to the person reviewing. I'm really excited that we're able to come to a good place with this. I'm going to read it out loud just so we can talk a little bit more about it.
Okay.
The most up-to-date problem statement reads, despite the number of language learning tools available online, adults still face trouble learning because these tools do not have the immersive element of learning that is vital to language proficiency.
That's a hard word.
I'm really glad you brought that immersive element back in, because I think that's really what it seems like is that key component into what's not working about the current system, right? I wanted to make sure as we review your actual designs that part's highlighted a lot, because again, if I'm reviewing your portfolio and I'm reading this problem statement, again, as the very first thing, if that's what I'm identifying as the key component, I want to see how you've used design to specifically fix for that problem. And then let's read your goal statement. Provide adult learners with an effective and realistic way to build conversational skills so they can achieve their language learning goals at their own pace. So I really like that this build conversational skills, again, because I think that ties really well back in with this immersive element of learning. And then the part where you say learning language goals at their own pace. I thought that was really interesting too. And I would be looking for within the design how you've tied that into it. What does that mean at their own pace? Is there something that you've designed to make sure that like time is a part of something that's considered? So I thought that was interesting. Is that like someone who learns really fast versus really slow? Is there a way that you've designed for that specifically? You're saying that you designed the project as a part of Career Foundry. I think that's really useful details. And you're not sure you need these dates here. Well, I guess why did you include that?
I read online, like I've tried to follow a lot of like UX people on Twitter, and people are giving their feedback and things like that. So Jared Spool, he mentioned that he really likes seeing dates, just contextualize things like what year are we in and how old was this project basically.
Interesting.
That context. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. I follow him on Twitter too, and he's got a lot of great knowledge to share. I don't know, I guess I'm not sure I completely agree. And again, this is where like you gotta talk to a lot of people and like figure out what's best for you. Only because I think it's important if you have a project online that's really old and you want to make sure that it's clear that this work was old. But like if you're actively interviewing, it's almost like, well, hopefully your work is up to date because that's what you're presenting. Yeah, I don't know. I think, you could go either way, but I don't know if it's necessary from my perspective. Yeah. All right. So now for the designs. Let's talk more about this. What we talked about was an image at the top, right, to show off what the work's going to be about. Problem, goal, super important statements to really refine and work on. This is great. These like little insights from discovery phase. This is something that Katherine, how she wanted to tell this story. And I think they're really clear and concise, and it's good context to have when we're thinking about, just like some of these things that you learned and how we can understand how you use those learnings to create the design. I think that's great. And then your final designs, which we'll go over here in a moment. And then under that is where we start looking into the process. And this is great. It's like, again, you captured me at the top. Let's see how you got there. I'm still wondering if you can use less words and more images to show the designs. Again, just thinking through how I review this, I would probably not spend a lot of time reading these paragraphs. And I actually haven't yet, so we can go through this like live. But something that is hard to figure out when you're early on with this is how to actually tell stories using images in ways that are sort of less realistic. So I remember getting this feedback too when I was first off learning. I was actually from my dad, I think. And it was actually just about thumbnails. Thumbnails are really hard to get right. And I remember I was putting together my portfolio to get a summer internship. And I went to my dad for some feedback on my portfolio. My dad's also a designer. The very first thing he said was, you need to work on your thumbnails. These are not captivating. Because it's important. Like, that's what's going to bring someone into the project. And something that I learned from him in how to actually create thumbnails effectively was that you don't always have to use the design in a realistic way. It's almost like you want to be creating an image through pieces of your image to call out different parts that you want to talk about. And so we'll read through this, but I'm going to try to think about ways that take from your design to really tell that story. So instead of layering these things, which it's you're kind of covering parts of the design, maybe we could highlight certain parts and tell the story based off of the snippet of information you want to tell. So let's just read through this. Practical topics. I centered these topics around situations that many people encounter at work and traveling abroad. During usability testing, many people were delighted by the topics provided, noting their practicality. Success. One user referred to the topics as cards, which inspired me to add rearranging function to this home screen so users can drag most of the relevant topics to the top. This also addresses the needs for those who are power users. Cool. Okay. Wow. I'm not sure I necessarily get all that detail from just the image without reading it. So you want to let's brainstorm ways that we could try to highlight more of that story without requiring someone to read it, because let's just assume they're not, right? So how does one drag these around?
I was thinking like a hold, and then obviously it would wiggle or something like that, similar to the iPhone feature.
Okay.
And then you can rearrange it and things like that.
Okay, great. I love that. Let's see. They were delighted by the topics provided, noting their practicality. Okay, so the topics are basics, at the cafe, at the club, at the market, at the mall, transportation. So are these things to say at the cafe, things to say at the club? Is that the idea?
Yeah, basically, this is kind of a situation where it would take place at a cafe. So the video exercise there would be, you know, people like ordering coffee, and then at the market it could be like you asking someone like, oh, where is the water or something like that. So
Cool.
it's for the videos
Yes.
specifically.
Okay, that is really awesome, and I would totally want to use this. Okay, so what I'm thinking is a couple of things. One, I wonder if whatever makes more sense to when you're gonna like write or refine this paragraph, to not use language like I centered these topics around, and try to make it more general, like centering topics around situations that many people. So it's less about like I made this decision because it was this personal project I worked on, and more try to like make it more like realistic almost. Like we already know from the details at the top that this was like a personal project you worked on. Just by the nature of your resume, we can also tell you're a new student. So that's fine. I don't think we need that detail at this point in the project. So I would say that's number one. Second, I think you can start to break out this paragraph into more like small nuggets of information. I center topics around situations that many people encounter at work and traveling abroad. Do like a paragraph break, and then maybe just give some of those examples, like 3. So you could say basics, like a list kind of. Basics, paragraph break. At the cafe, paragraph break. At the club, paragraph break. And then do another paragraph break, and that's where you'll do the next part of the paragraph. So you're just like highlighting within the paragraph too these topics that like can catch their attention. And it's also like an easy piece of information to read if they're scanning. And then the next paragraph you can write more about the specifics of this part of the practical topics design. I would still try to like simplify it down a bit more, just assuming people are not going to necessarily read all of this. That's the second thing. And then as far as imagery goes, I think it'd be interesting if you tried to simulate the interaction here. So if you don't have prototyping skills, that's fine. If you do, this could be a really great opportunity to show that off. Not necessary, but you can simulate that interaction with just images too. And we can go over this offline if you want some more specific help on that. But like in my mind, what I'm thinking is if this is a space that's going to fit, like you can make the design just a little bit smaller, and you can, this is kind of hard to describe without being able to draw it for you. But like I would move I'd make this like screen a little bit smaller, and then next to it on the side, I'm sort of thinking you could have like break out one of those cards onto like next to it outside the artboard. Again, we're thinking about this like unrealistically, but it's going to help show the idea. So like let's say it's like at the club. Like let's imagine someone wants to move at the club to the top of their search screen. So copy that at the club piece of design, move it outside of this like screen, and put a little hard press, like whatever that hard press idea you have, like put little like X's around all of them, or edit icon, whatever it is, on all of the other cards. And with the one that's outside, you can use some maybe like lines or like an arrow or something, like it's going to move to the top. And so now when someone's reviewing this project, they're like, oh, so these are cards, like you can move them around. And then when they like look at the paragraph, they're seeing that you've like listed some of these topics, and then maybe they will actually read more into it. And then when they do read it, they're like, oh, they get that idea of like what you're imagining how it would work.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Like you don't necessarily have to like wireframe or like prototype the whole thing out, but just demonstrate that thinking.
Yeah. I think like the summary of it is, instead of explaining the design, try to show it as much as possible. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% realistic to how someone would use it on their phone, because you're trying to show an idea. But that's just one idea. I think whatever you come up with, if you can show more of what you're explaining in the paragraph with the image, that's going to be really helpful for you. Anything else about this? I'd be happy to review these other ones with you and brainstorm ideas, but I think we should move on to your offline portfolio for now.
Yeah, makes sense. I've got a lot of stuff to work on now. So it's good. I love that.
Really, like, you're really close, I promise.
Yeah.
Such a long way already. It's really exciting. All right, let's do this. So why don't you, how are you feeling about this part of the process?
I basically just sent you like an outline. It's of what I hope to do. So I just flesh out each of the slides with like, you know, pictures and like things like that. But basically I think my main questions are like, do I highlight the process enough, or is it similar to the issue I had with my original portfolio where it's like too much.
And this is good, helpful for me to understand it's an outline too, so that it's a work in progress. I want to start by talking about like these few slides here at the beginning, right? Like, again, I know this is an outline, but I really think this like story part about like who you are is something really important. You really want to make sure that it's really like unique to you and it really speaks to you and your brand, like how you want to present yourself to the company. So like with the like title slide, for example, like that's something I would like almost specifically design speaking to the company you're interviewing at, right? So this first slide might change depending on who you're interviewing for. So it could be like you could include their name in it, or you could say like, hey, so-and-so, or like Katherine plus so-and-so. Like you can really change that title slide depending on who you're talking to and feel like flexible with that. So that's just one thing I want to mention for that. And then these parts, let's just read them really quick. So UX designer with a background in workshop facilitation and process improvements, cool. Visual problem solver, I love diagramming and sketching out ideas as a way to explain and also better understand problems and solutions, cool. Knowledge of user-centered design and particularly interested in using data to translate into intuitive and accessible designs, great. These are all really interesting, and I'd be excited to see how you visualize these. I wouldn't just keep it as a list, because remember, you're presenting this work, so you want to use images a lot and remember these points when you're presenting it to them. What I'm missing here, I think, is some of your story that's not design related. I think whatever your background was in before you took this course is super interesting. Often where you live is super interesting. Anything that you could take from your personal life that you've learned that you want to apply to how you approach design, I think is interesting and should be told, because that's just going to help you, like, humanize you, really. Like, you're going to be working with these people, and they may be like, oh, like Katherine does horseback riding, like I do horseback riding, cool. Like now I have something to talk to her about, and it's relatable. So like whatever that thing is for you, I think you should highlight it here. And definitely like take a couple of slides to do it. It doesn't have to just all fit onto one slide. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I had that issue like since I think like graduating college, where like what is too private, like what is too public, and always that like what is oversharing, like, you know, it's that it's like a common thread, I think, in terms of how I want to present myself. Because I've gotten feedback before where it's like, you know, you can like smile a bit more and like and just be a bit more personable during interviews, like, okay, like be myself, but it's that constant struggle of like how much should I tell someone, and yeah.
Absolutely. No, I totally hear you. I think what's cool about design, the design community at least, is that like we really do, like I think that background of like who you are and where you've come sparks a lot of creative energy or like creative insights. And so like I think that, at least from my experience with interviewing within this space, it's like it's almost expected. Like we want to, like I think it's a way for teams to better understand different types of people, like, and people have different backgrounds and different experiences, and like that brings different creative energy to the team. Yeah, I think that like that's going to definitely help make you stand out as a candidate if you bring yourself to the interview more.
Perfect.
Yeah, great. It's definitely not easy, and it's definitely something you want to spend time and think about a lot more. So we have an introduction, we have process, interviews, we have personas, your journey map, 2 journey maps, the card sorting exercise, speaker wireframes, usability test plan, some post-it note exercise, spreadsheet, usability issues, speaker screen, customize home, peer feedback. Okay, let's see. And then what I learned. Okay, cool. So, I think this is a great start. Since this is like an outline, I won't be giving a lot of feedback on like, you know, the types of images necessarily, because I definitely think you want to be using a lot of images here, but we don't have to talk about that aspect of it right now. Have you thought much about this presentation as a story? Because you have 2 persona people here that I'm noticing, and you have 2 journey maps here. And I think in my mind, when I see that, I'm like, that's potentially 2 very different, complicated stories. And I think that might be too much to share for one interview. you could pick one. I mean, you should pick one, but just pick one, and let's make the rest of the project presentation about that story. So why did you include both of them, do you think?
I included both because, like, with the home stream topics, I designed it for people who want to learn languages, like, for work and just to kind of break the ice with people and, like, coworkers, and if they have to, go abroad for, like, a conference or something, but also for people who are kind of, like, in their 20s through, like, 40s, who, like, travel for fun and things like that. So I was trying to address these two different, both overlapping, I guess, needs.
Yeah. And as we go through the presentation into these other slides, do you think that there's one that you ended up focusing on more, or?
I definitely focused more on Amelia rather than the other person.
Okay.
And yeah, that was kind of like one of my questions was like how much to show, and if with this offline portfolio, if it should be like very specific, like the problem statement. So it's like, okay, let's just talk through like Amelia's use of the app and like.
Yes, the answer is yes. You want to focus on one. I think the fact that you did make two and you were thinking through different types of people, that's an interesting part of the story you want to talk about this project. Maybe that means that you create one slide before 7 and 8, and that slide like highlights that you thought through those two different types of use cases. And then the next slide, you dive deeper into Amelia's story because that's the one that you're going to show work on later on. And also, this is a lot of text. I don't think this is necessarily the way you're going to need to present this when you're presenting it in front of people. Maybe if it's important for you to see, for them to see that you've done this type of, like, the way to present the persona, I could see you wanting to maybe include it in this way. But I'm not sure that this is the slide you want to stay on when you're presenting about this type of story, this person's story, because it's a lot of text still. What's going on with this user interviews slide?
I was thinking that in like a presentation format, I would just list out the different high-level takeaways, and then basically this is the stuff that I gathered from the 3 users that I interviewed, and then from there it's like, okay, I have like 10 or so like main takeaways. It's like, what should I even mention in person? But now that you're saying that I should only focus on one persona, maybe just like the high-level takeaways that speak to that one persona and that are applicable to her.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like, just looking through this right now, it's like, I think it's some of those things that we talked about that show up on your online portfolio. It's like the YouTube video was mentioned as a useful language tool. Like, I think that sort of is a differentiator, this like video aspect. Journey map, sort of the same thing as the persona. There's a usefulness to it because you want to highlight that you know how to do this type of exercise. But again, maybe like think through some ways of how you would want to present this in person to someone. It may just be that you have it like this. Maybe you start cutting some things out of it that you know you're going to speak to, so that they're not trying to read your slide while you're talking to them. Card sorting. I don't know if I'm sold that this is the right image to show that. Or maybe it's just like you need to zoom in. Like if there was some sort of specific insight you remember from card sorting that leads to the next thing, highlight that. Talk to me about this slide.
I wanted to include this one, because we were saying that was just too much text, but like highlighting things that, yeah, I'm kind of just like trying to show my thought process.
Okay, yeah. Just remember, you're there with them, which is what's so great about this. And then I guess I'm also just wondering, did you test these wireframes? Like, what's the story? Like, why is this show up in this part of your presentation?
I believe I did test these like initial low fidelity ones, and then.
Okay. So let me pause you there then. So if you did this screen, a part of you highlighting that you did wireframes and tested it and what you learned. So like that's the reason why it's here. Like that doesn't necessarily need to be on 2 screens. The interview team to know that you know how to make wireframes, I can see why you want to include something like this, but like really give reason for the page inserted into your presentation at this very moment in time. Same thing here. It's like, make sure, again, you're not presenting this to me, so I don't quite know, but like make sure that every slide that you have here about the research, like it's leading me into understanding more insights that you gather that will then lead us to the final design thing. Let's see, what else should we talk about? So issue number 1, issue number 5. So are these the final designs?
So the usability issues, the one that where I listed 1 through 5, those were like the 5 main things that I picked out from like that really rainbow, like that really colorful spreadsheet. So those were the 5 things I want to focus on in the next round of iterations.
Okay.
So yeah, for the 5 issues, it's like, I don't like, is that even like, should I only talk about the 5 or the issues out of the 5 that speak directly to, I guess, Amelia's use of Rally?
Highlighting 2 issues like this is great. I like these 2 slides actually look the most final, I guess. I think it's great to just focus on 2 like that. I can see that being a really good part of the story. And then I guess what I would say next is that make sure that when you show the final designs that you've highlighted how you've solved for those issues that came up. Like issue 5 had this problem, and so this is the evidence that shows for it. This is sort of my thinking around how I was going to solve for it, and then boom, this is like what I came up with. And if there is more like feedback that comes in between that, if that's what this is about, insert that there too. But ultimately, it's like your decision, and just always be thinking through in your head, imagining yourself presenting this work to someone, because that's going to help you figure out the order of how you want to talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was really fun and like really enlightening process.
That's so great to hear. All right. We'll talk more soon.
Okay. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
All right, so I just wrapped up that conversation with Katherine. Her and I are going to keep working on her project. It's so close and I want to keep working on it with her. It's been so cool working with her and just seeing how she's taken the project just purely in this like online format into a presentable project. There's still a lot of work to be done, I think, but it's very clear that it's come a long way and I'm super excited and happy for her. Before we totally wrap things up, I wanted to mention that I recently started a professional design coaching practice, which means I could be working with one of you. All you gotta do is head on over to my Patreon page. I have a few slots open still for professional coaching. Planning to keep the group small for now. Eventually I'll open up to a lot more people once I've got a good process down. So if there happens to be no more slots open, message me, let me know you're interested, and I can sort of track on that. I really, really want to work more closely with people who are, especially trying to like get their first design job. I really want to help people through this like more personalized process of working with them individually on anything from portfolios to presentations, even just like a specific project that they're working on. I'd be happy to help you with finance related goals, or really anything that you want to work on within design. I want to be that person for you to help you get to where you want to be. All you gotta do is go to Patreon. I got that link in the description. If you want to just support me on Patreon too, I would love, love, love your support. I think that's all for now. I'm really, really excited to do more portfolio related work. And if you enjoyed this video and thought it was useful, please don't forget to give it a like. If you like me and my videos and you want to support what I'm doing here, do make sure to subscribe. I think that's all for now. Yeah, I will see you next time. Bye.